It's time for MacBreak Weekly. Alex, Andy, and Jason are all in the house. They have an interesting theory about this Financial Times article. Apple says, we're going to start making all our phones in India. Really? What's wrong with Siri, and how come Perplexity can do it better? And yes, Apple says, or at least somebody says, Apple's going to do less expensive Vision Pros this year. Is that possible? All that and more coming up next on MacBreak Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 970, recorded Tuesday, April 29th, 2025. Too little jam over too much bread. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show where we cover the latest Apple news with these fine gents. Bandy and Akko visiting us from the Boston Public Library, or some library somewhere.
I am showing support for the library system by exploiting its many wonderful resources.
It was Independent Bookstore Day on Saturday. I bet you went to a bookstore and picked up a comic or something.
I actually went here and bought some books.
Okay, that counts.
Yep.
A library is as good as a bookstore, better in some respects. Also, Alex Lindsay from OfficeHours.global. Hello, Alex.
Hello. Good to be here.
You spent Independent Book Day on camera all day, probably.
Yeah, sure.
Knowing you. Knowing you.
You know.
Yeah, you know how it is.
Yeah.
And Mr. Jason Snell from sixcolors.com.
Oh.
I am Groot.
I am putting my, that's actually a St. Jude thing, but he is Groot-like. That's the Fever Fighter. I am revving up my colors. I am making sure all of the colors in the ink tank are ready because there's going to be some Apple results.
When is Thursday? Wednesday? Thursday. Good. So by next week, we will have many colors.
Oh man, there'll be so many charts for an
what do you
episode
think?
that I'm not
Is it going to be a rough
Use
quarter?
my charts. It's a mystery. I think the quarter is going to be fine. I think the question is, what's the guidance going to be like, and how are they going to be able to dodge all of the tariff questions? Because they want to dodge them all.
Yeah.
Without getting into the show, they sold a lot more iPhones and other devices this quarter than they thought they were going to because
all
of
a sudden.
So that's good news.
Yeah, and they're going to have to mention that. Although some of that is going to spill into the next quarter because they spend a few weeks compiling the numbers before releasing them. So I think some of that is going to actually spill, but they're going to have to talk about it. And this is the lesson that I think we've learned is they don't want to give anybody any ammunition in terms of how they're dealing with politics and international politics and all of that. And so it will be interesting to see how they spin it. So yes, Thursday we'll hear, and then feel free to use all my charts next week.
Apple stock, I don't know how important that is, took a dive early in the month when the tariffs were announced, but recovered mostly, not entirely, over the remaining few days.
I think there is some degree of confidence that Apple and the administration have an understanding about this. Of course, nobody really knows, but I think that there's a sense that we're just sort of diving into it here. But like, there's a sense that something is going on, which is why Andy put in our show notes, like Elizabeth Warren wrote a letter to Tim Cook that's basically like, what did you say to the president?
Dear
which
Tim.
I can't imagine that anybody is going to ever really respond to that. Like, what are your privileged conversations with the White House about this? Like,
I can pretty much guarantee Donald Trump does not have a taping system in the Oval Office.
You would think not.
He would have. He's learned that lesson.
Only Putin has a taping system in the Oval Office. You're right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Very good.
I was thinking maybe like Barron is just there shooting video all the time.
It's for my TikTok, Dad.
Yeah.
Hard part is there's lots of I think the problem is there's lots of people having conversations with Trump. Tim just is the only one that's effective. It's not like other people aren't trying. He's just the only one winning. So
we don't know yet. I mean, that's the
automakers
got some concessions yesterday. So, everybody's going to get everybody's going to get something.
But look,
because Apple got carve-outs, but then they got taken back, and Trump specifically said that no, we're not making exceptions for broad exceptions. Of course, who knows what he was on that day? So his mind changes from day to day, but it's so fluid.
It's also kind of who's the last person to talk to him. But I will say this, although he likes his economic advisors that he's got and all of that, I think, just little armchair psychology, that he likes cozying up to business titans, titans of industry.
Yeah.
They make him feel like a business titan, right? Which he certainly thinks he is, as well as being the president. He's
his
a business
peers.
titan.
Yes.
And so if there's proper kind of like proper etiquette, proper fealty, whatever you want to say, from business titans, going against the business titans strikes me as something that he's less inclined to do, even if the economic advisors are like, no, be tough. And then Tim Apple walks in and says, you know, business, where you're killing our business. It's a great American business. I think that's the method that they're using. But, you know, it's so random and chaotic that nobody really knows what's going on. I suspect that reports that Apple is doing some stuff and making some changes, they're investing in America, they're moving some stuff to India, they're doing all this. I think that's all going to be taken as evidence that they're doing something in response to what's going on in Washington. And part of me thinks that that's actually what they wanted. The White House is just to feel like they've, had that impact and made them, change their business around a little bit. But I think the power of being a big business and a CEO of a big business does go a long way. And it's not just Tim Cook. I do think it's the auto execs and all of that too, that I think Donald Trump is inclined to listen to CEOs, and because he fancies himself a business guy himself fundamentally, and that even his economic advisors who are like academics, I just think when push comes to shove, he's probably going to believe the business people and not his advisors.
Yeah, but this is why I'm glad that Elizabeth Warren and others are not necessarily putting pressure on Tim Cook, but keeping that conversation active. I don't think the implication
is that some under the table deal was made.
In addition to that, which is unfair to all the CEOs who don't have $1 million to donate to an inaugural fund,
or a table.
Or table or whatever. It is exactly what Jason said, that every time Trump says, well, I've been talking to Tim Cook, parentheses, my fellow extremely successful billionaire businessman, head of a businessman, and he says, and we agree on this point. Every time he gives Trump legitimacy that maybe on some areas Trump has not earned, and the damage that will do is real, although it's going to be hard to enumerate for years to come. So that's why I'm glad that some pressure is continuing to be put on him.
And wisely, Apple is not waiting for concessions. The Financial Times exclusive story that they are aiming to source all U.S. iPhones in India. To avoid, there's still tariffs in India. I think it's 26%, but it's not 145%.
And I think that they've been moving for a while, and this just simply turns the volume up. In some ways, I think it gives them cover. If they just are moving out of China, China's like, what are you doing? But if they're getting these huge tariffs, they can be like, well, we can't help.
Yeah, they probably wanted to move anyway.
So in many ways, this is cover.
This is the time to do it too, right? If something gets resolved between the U.S. and China later, it'll be harder for them to do this. So you put this out there now. I have heard a theory, and I think that there is some legitimacy in this, that FT story might be planted as a way, because it sends a signal of like, look what we could do. We're just going to do this thing. We're going to move all this to India. Also, many people, I think definitely Mark Gurman and at least one other person reported like, this is not possible. Yeah. There is no way for them. And Gurman was like, not only is there no way for that level of volume, U.S. volume, to come out of India next year, but when you're looking at a folding phone, for example, and that super thin phone that are on new production processes, even more unlikely that you'd be able to build those outside of China. And then related, and I thought this was really interesting, China is apparently now slow playing the export of products that are used to build factories and assembly lines because, they're not preventing it, but they don't love it and they don't want to make it easy. So there were reports about how, you can't just build a factory. And a lot of the precision tooling and machinery is made in China, or the things you use to build it are made in China. And those have been going from like 1 week turnarounds to 4 month turnarounds where it goes in a black hole. And there was one report that was amazing. I think this might've been Gurman. There was a report that, somebody made like a shell company in Vietnam, sold the equipment to Vietnam, and then in Vietnam it was accepted and then immediately shipped to Apple in India. So, or Foxconn, which is building the phone. So there's a lot of moving parts in terms of Apple and China and the U.S. and manufacturing. But yet this FT story comes out and just says, oh, they're just going to move it all to India. I mean, is that meant to shake people up? Because the experts sort of say that it's unlikely to be true. But very interesting.
The Tata plants are already at capacity. They're going to have to build immense new facilities in order to fulfill that goal. As Jason said, India has been doing an amazing job assembling phones that are not a brand new manufacture. And so it's unlikely that they're going to have the capacity to build a super thin phone, to assemble a folding phone anytime soon. On top of that, Foxconn for a couple of months now has been saying that, look, China is making it hard for us to ship equipment we need into India. They're making it hard for us to move personnel that we need out of China and into India. And then the third problem is that China is a ginormous market for Apple for sales. It's not just the company that manufactures everything. How far is Apple willing to go to honk off the Chinese government by blatantly saying, yeah, well, we're going to be removing manufacturing capability from you and try not to give you quite so much business. Apple's already having huge problems competing with Huawei and other locally owned Chinese businesses that are assembling phones and building phones. So there's a lot of variables in this calculus, and we don't know. The ball is still in spin, and it's hard for Apple to make a decision, knowing that, look, with the decisions we're making today will affect us 5 years from now, and 5 years from now we're going to have a different president, or we're going to have a country that's in such a state of disarray that we want to be in the business of hoarding food and toilet paper as opposed to manufacturing luxury phones. So we don't want to remake ourselves in a form that's going to be obsolete 5 years from now.
I think that the other thing is this also plays in the Indian market. So what you're saying, we're bringing all this stuff over, that's helping the folks there that are negotiating any kind of, all the other things that have to happen. There's a lot of negotiation in India to build anything. So, not saying, well, we're just giving you the little phones, but we're actually going to move everything here. As a planted story, it works great. It has the right amount of clouds over, look what we could do, has the right amount of like shiny object for India, has the right amount of, shiny object for Trump. So it's a well-planted article. I think that I do agree that it's probably been leaked on purpose.
This is also the week that Apple and Tim Cook released an Indian-based study about how much money, how many millions and billions of dollars are being fed into the Indian app developer economy through the App Store, both to chase after antitrust actions that are kind of pending in India against Apple in the App Store, where they are pending pretty much everywhere that there's an active government, but also basically saying that we are invested in India, we are contributors to the Indian economy and to the Indian populace. Let's continue to dance and sing together because we love the music that we're making together.
So Foxconn has one plant already in India. I mean, Apple's been doing this for a while, partly because of India's tariffs, ironically.
Yeah,
well, I think it started there, but also I think that the constant drumming of by 2027 or 2028, the Chinese are supposed to be ready to invade Taiwan. You can't take that completely, like that's the official goal of the party. So when the party's saying that, you have to take it seriously. And I think that Apple every company manufacturing something in China has to have a plan B by 2028. Like they just have to have some other way to make stuff where it doesn't go to zero. And so India and Brazil and others, I think it started because of the import duties or the import rules. But I think that it also it picked up speed because of what China's saying, which is dumb. Like, why do you say that in public? And then it picked up even more speed because of the tariffs.
It's hysterical because in his Power On newsletter on Sunday, Mark Gurman said, I had that story yes. Early in April. I had that story. As first reported here on Power On in early April. he points out, which is, as far as I know, accurate, that Apple could make roughly a third of the annual U.S. iPhone demand in India now. That's why they have to build 2 new factories in order to do that.
Now,
one would be the second biggest iPhone factory in the world. Of course, the parts still come from China, but that does avoid the big tariff of importing an entire phone from China.
Exactly. And we don't know what demand will be like if the tariff regime continues, right? Like this may be an easier bar to clear if demand for iPhones goes down because the price has to go up. But the goal here is to evade as much of a price hike due to tariffs as possible. And, but I think Andy and Alex make really great points. Like, we don't know what's going to happen. You could spend billions of dollars on a factory and then the winds could shift and suddenly it's more advantageous to build it in China and not India. Yeah, absolutely.
He says, and I think this is what you were saying, that while Apple's manufacturing in India has reached parity with China in terms of the current iPhones, the 20-year anniversary models are extraordinarily complex. They'll require new parts and production techniques. And, of course, the folding phone would, as would, I suppose, the ultra slim phone.
Yeah.
So he says certainly not by the year 2027.
But one thing that I will say about that is you could still build your cutting edge folding phone in China because nobody's seen that price before.
That's right. It
so
could
if
be
the goal
$3,000.
is to more or less maintain existing price points, and we know Apple loves maintaining price points. They've just spent 3 years getting MacBook Air back down to $999 because they really like that price point, and that's true with the iPhone as well. But a new phone, it's like the iPhone 10 came out and it established a much higher baseline price for the iPhone, and they've maintained it ever since. So the one advantage here is you're building a folding phone in China. Nobody's seen it before. Nobody knows what it costs, and they can set a price that's new. And that includes some amount of tariff in it and say, well, yeah, it just costs $20.99 or whatever. And that's just what it costs. And it won't be the same. Like they will have, I think, less concern about doing that, especially for a cutting edge model, charging a load for it, than they do taking your mainstream iPhone 17 or 18 and jumping it up $200 or $300.
And as Joe in our Discord points out, even if you're assembling in India, if China invades Taiwan, you still have a big problem because all of the parts are made.
Again, you got to do things in parts. So the first thing you do is get the factories there. Then you get all your machinery there. Then you slowly keep moving pieces out.
But this could take many, many years.
Well, yeah.
But the best time to start was 10 years ago. The second best time is today.
Right.
So.
TSMC has that factory in Phoenix, and it's behind the times. But I mean, that was a hedge, and it'll be interesting to see what happens there because Trump has said very negative things about the CHIPS Act, and the CHIPS Act is all about building U.S. chip building capacity. But I think his problem with it is it goes against the tariff policy, which is, we don't have to worry about that because tariffs, people are going to want to build in the U.S. We don't need to give them money.
His problem with that is the name on the bottom line of the bill.
Yeah, it was well, if it's anything like NAFTA, maybe what the people in the tech industry will convince him is that let's get rid of the CHIPS Act and replace it with the Micro Act or something, right? That is literally just the same thing.
Right.
But because you want TSMC building in places that aren't Taiwan, in part because, it's where all the chips come from. And if China invades, and listening to people talk about that, it's not even about like what the geopolitical fallout would be, which would be enormous. It's that physically, a lot of stuff's going to get blown up. And so like, even if the geopolitics of it are not as problematic as they probably will be, you're going to lose the factories. You're going to probably lose a bunch of the factories. So you can't it is a choke point for the whole world.
Well, and the problem is that in Ukraine, we've now told China that if you take the land, we'll let you keep it.
Right.
And so this is so we're setting this up in the same way that we set these things up by the wrong actions in the wrong place. You set up a situation where China has now been signaled that they can go ahead and invade Taiwan, and they'll probably be able to keep it.
Yeah. Well, there you have it. There's the weekly tariff report. Tim's like juggling plates. I mean, the
bottom line is there's going to be a lot of exceptions because tariffs are stupid. So these tariffs are dumb. They're a dumb idea. They were a dumb idea when people thought them up. They're a dumb idea when they opened them up and had ChatGPT do them. And now they've realized they can't actually execute most of them. There'll be some surgical ones, but most of the stuff is going to go away because it's horrible for the economy. It's horrible for the Republican Party, and it's horrible for Trump. So because it's a dumb idea, and so I don't know how to, so I think that most of the tariffs are going to fade away. We're not going to see most of this stuff. It's all going to kind of, first there'll be a bunch of exceptions, and it'll all kind of fade away because everyone just wants to walk away from the stupid idea.
Yeah. Trump can come by and say that I'm happy to announce that the tariffs have done their work. We've brought all of those foreigners to heel, and therefore they're no longer necessary.
It's not a matter of leaning into them. It's a matter of how do you save face while
exactly. He can basically
the dumb idea under the run.
Yeah, exactly.
You can declare victory.
He doesn't have to. He doesn't have to say that this was a total disaster. Now our markets are in free fall. Now the chairman of the Fed, even our guy, thinks that we are going to have a huge problem on our hands sooner rather than later. Yeah. So therefore, I'm admitting that I made a mistake and reversing my decision. But he can say, we had to do that to put pressure on it. That's why I'm a master negotiator. I managed to put the pressure on them to get those concessions, and now they're no longer necessary.
I hope you're all right. But once you start a trade war at least with China, it's a little hard to put that out.
It's going to be hard to put it out. It's going to cause a lot of damage.
It's not just us; it's them as well.
It's going to be trouble everywhere. We've already caused a bunch of trouble everywhere. It's a bull in a china shop running around, on cocaine. So it's
I just brand new trading blocks are being formed. It's
I wouldn't count on it being resolved unilaterally. Let's put it that way.
Oh no, I don't think so.
At this point, China's doing.
No, we broke it. We bought it.
Yeah, we broke it. Yeah. And as somebody points out also in the Discord, actually, I think it's on YouTube, that if China did attempt to take Taiwan, it would be highly likely that there'd be so much devastation that the infrastructure would be shot.
Exactly. Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you do. It's okay. There you go. There's your dystopian vision for the future. You said you're not going to be here next week, Jason?
Yeah, I'm going to be visiting my mom in Phoenix, so you can use my charts without me.
Nice. Well, we'll do you know what? Something, I think maybe this is like you planned this because we've done that before.
My mother's birthday doesn't change year to year, and it's her birthday, so that's how we have to do it. But when your mom's in her mid 80s, you make the effort.
Oh, yeah, go. I believe me, I know.
Yeah. Jason loves his mother.
Yeah,
wait, that's actually
my mother appreciates visits from her son.
Oh, I think that's awesome. I'm glad you're doing that. That's wonderful. All right, we will have more in just a bit. There's some better news. In fact, we can go through Mark Gurman's predictions because there's quite a few in his latest newsletter. And here comes iOS 18.5 just around the corner. We could talk about what to expect. Jason, I presume you've been using the public beta.
No, I'm. This is the time of year where I don't bother with the betas because all they do is break things and they don't really add things. So I get off the train and I don't worry about it.
Is that because we're close to iOS 19?
Yeah.
So
there's not really any new stuff in these betas, and so there's not a lot of benefit in writing that and having all your shortcuts break, and then then half of them come back, and then it's just like not worth it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense actually. Jason Snell is here. Andy Anako. Alex Lindsay, we're glad you're here too for MacBreak Weekly. This episode of MacBreak Weekly brought to you by 1Password. Do your end users always work on company-owned devices and IT-approved apps? No, I didn't think so. So how do you keep your company's data safe when it's sitting on all those unmanaged apps and devices? 1Password has an answer to this question: extended access management. 1Password Extended Access Management helps you secure every sign-in for every app on every device because it solves the problems traditional IAM and MDM can't touch. Imagine your company's security like the quad of a college campus. There are nice brick paths between the buildings. Those are the company-owned devices, the IT-approved apps, the managed employee identities. And then there are the paths people actually use, the shortcuts worn through the grass. Those are the actual straightest line from point A to point B. Those are the unmanaged devices, the shadow IT apps, the non-employee identities like contractors. Most security tools only work on those happy brick paths, but many security problems occur on the shortcuts. 1Password Extended Access Management is the first security solution that brings all these unmanaged devices, apps, and identities under your control. It ensures that every user credential is strong and protected. Every device is known and healthy, and every app is visible. 1Password is ISO 27001 certified with regular third-party audits. It exceeds the standards set by various authorities and is a leader in security. It's security for the way we work today, and it's now generally available to companies with Okta and Microsoft Entra, and in beta for Google Workspace customers. Secure every app, device, and identity, even the unmanaged ones, at 1password.com/MacBreak, all lowercase. That's PASSWORD.com/MacBreak. We thank them so much for their support of MacBreak Weekly. So the big scoop, at least the headline scoop in Sunday's Power On newsletter from Mark Gurman, Apple begins breaking up its AI team with robotics and Siri changes. They're still trying to get this worked out. John Giandrea now is really focused 100% on building the models, which Mark points out makes it a little easier to lose him if he should say, I'm done here. Yeah. I'm out of here. That's good.
Which feels inevitable.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of one of those things like everything's just getting pulled away from him while he figures out what he's going to do next.
Yeah. It's, of course, Apple got Giandrea from Google, but it was pretty clear that he wasn't turning Siri into anything useful. He took over Siri, AI, machine learning groups, an operations group for annotating, analyzing data for AI. He acquired, I don't know, took engineers from across the company working on fundamental AI models and eventually the car. 6 years later, this unified approach, says Mark Gurman, it's hard to call it successful. I think that seems fair. And now, as we know, we've talked about this before, they stripped Giandrea of his job, took Vision Pro head Mike Rockwell and put him in charge of Siri. And he reports to Craig Federighi. Robotics is now being reassigned. Apple's moving its robotics group from Giandrea. They did so this week. The team Mark says, is important. Robots are clearly going to be a huge piece of consumer technology over the next decade, and Apple's rivals are investing heavily in this area. Apple's working on a tabletop robot. That seems like a little bit of a stretch to call that a robot.
It always is. It's like a smart speaker that can pivot
with an arm.
It's just like Mark Gurman keeps talking about these things as robots, and they're not.
A robot.
But it sounds like they're unbundling. I mean, it's funny because the traditional Apple does not have product groups. It's got groups that are functional. It's the hardware group and the software group and all of that. And for some skunkwork projects, far future kind of things, they put them off in their own silos. So apparently there was a robotics silo, there was a Vision Pro silo. We know there was a car was a silo. And it sounds like as a part of this, one of the things that Tim Cook and his senior managers are doing is breaking a bunch of that stuff off. And of course, a lot of it is stuff that was under John Giandrea, which yes, he's probably gonna, he's basically, I think, on gardening leave at this point. Like you don't get all that stuff taken away unless you're probably gonna go out the door, and all he has left is his model research. But like when Rockwell came into the software group, they gave the hardware group to John, or the Vision Pro stuff to the hardware group. So again, there was
under
a Vision
John
Pro
Turnus
group, and instead John Turnus got the hardware. Rockwell keeps the software in Craig Federighi's group. This is actually how Apple generally does business. And so it seems like maybe one of the things that they're thinking internally is we got a little away from our functional groups with some of these skunkworks projects, and it's time to go back to what we do best, which is let the hardware group do the hardware and let the software group do the software, which fair enough. Although I will say, I think most people who've been paying attention to Apple the last few years would tell you the hardware group is firing on all cylinders and the software group, maybe not so much. So we'll see what happens.
Is that how it's always been organized, hardware and software? Or was there some
Yeah, there's
blending
never
of the
been like a
teams?
Mac group. I mean, even when they were doing the iPhone or the iPod, there becomes a time when, you know, it no longer is a product group. It's just part of Apple. And that is so unusual in business in general. You usually have, you know, the Mac people are doing the Mac and the iPad people are doing the iPad and the iPhone
famously,
people, and they don't do that.
This caused problems for Microsoft over the years because the Office people hated the Windows people, and they would break things.
Exactly. And also, you don't get. Apple couldn't do what it does in that kind of an environment because so much of what Apple does is shared. The Apple Silicon
that's what I'm
team,
wondering.
right? Like all the chips are shared. The software, it's basically all the same operating system underneath, right? Like they're different, but it's basically the same. And the way they get that efficiency is by being able to reuse code, not just at the OS level, but at the app level. It's why they've built all of these things like Catalyst and Swift UI and things like that. Is because they want to reuse the pieces, and you can't do that if you've got a product-based organization where the iPad people are over here and they really hate the Mac people who are over here, and then the watch people are like, pay attention to us, and like that is not how they do it. I mean, there are people who are leads in those product categories, but they're part of these larger groups, and it works for them generally.
So after Steve passed, Johnny Ive was given, who was obviously a design guy, was given charge of the software as well. The theory at that time was, it should all be a unified thing, and we need a visionary without Steve, so maybe Johnny can do that. That was a big failure.
It was software and hardware design, so they still had to work with the software and hardware engineering teams.
It wasn't the underlining code. Okay.
And the designers are still. I believe that group is still basically in charge of hardware and software design, but you have to work with the engineers on it. So that's the idea. Yeah.
Okay. So robots are a big priority at this point, or are they more like the car?
Feels to me like by taking them out of their robotics group and making them part of actual functional groups.
They're serious about this.
They're serious about it to a point, but also that there may be not a stomach for as much pie in the sky stuff, right? I always view it as those individual pods are like, let's think about the future. Right. And once you're in the software or the hardware group, you're kind of thinking about what's
the product.
You can ship.
Yeah. And so Gurman's talking about a mobile machine as well as this tabletop robot, and they're exploring the ideas of humanoid robots.
Yeah, and I think that the challenge really is in the post Steve Apple is really becoming more and more like Google, which is that you got a whole bunch of ideas, and you keep on trying some of them, and you do want to. The idea is that you're gonna be ready for whatever's next because you are paying attention to it, but. It feels still like Apple is paying a lot of attention to a lot of different things. Now, I think that the robots maybe will be a big deal somewhere in the future, but it's pretty far away. And a lot of those things seem like a acquisition thing. And one of the challenges for Apple is that Apple tends not to. I mean, Beats I think is still the largest acquisition they've ever made at $3.5 billion. They're not really the culture. It makes it hard for them to. They tend not to want to absorb large companies. So that's always the challenge. But it feels like the better way for Apple to go in a lot of ways is to let the startups do the startup thing and then have them purchase them when they figured something out, as opposed to like trying to pie in the sky. Any large company, it's just very hard to work like a startup. And so you end up with lots of infrastructure and lots of logistics, and something that would have cost $1 for a startup costs $100 for a large company. And so I think it's going to be, I think that they are probably pulling their elbows in a little bit because a lot of these bigger projects haven't been as successful.
Yeah. One thing that could be, that kind of changes the landscape a little bit with robotics is that now there are AI models that are specific to robotics. NVIDIA has one, Google is developing one, where imagine 8 years ago, thinking about how difficult is it going to be to write software that can generate text and answer questions in a natural language way. And oh my God, it's just a huge unscalable problem. And you'd have to have like a really great product in mind for it to make it happen. Now it's like, well, the research is there. We can, as Alex said, we can maybe buy the people who know how to do that. But now it's like the ability, once you have the ability of, well, we can actually just plug in an AI system that can have a robot, no matter how we decide to build it, understand the concept of aim the camera at the person, at the child at all times during this conference call, and not have to really delve very, very hard into the idea of, well, how do we control this motor? How do we control this vision system? How do we coordinate these two to make sure that the systems aren't colliding with each other? I'm sure they're not going to just simply license Google's tech or license NVIDIA's AI, but now researchers can see a future in which actually that seems like it would not be as difficult to do as it might have been 5 or 6 years ago. So it opens up a lot of possibilities. I agree that it's kind of weird when we refer to, how about we have a smart home device so that has a Luxo-like arm on it, so that the screen is always pointing at the person who's actually listening to the music, and calling that a robot. But it has applications on lots of things that haven't necessarily been sussed out yet.
I think my problem is that I just still want my home automation to work before we get robots working. Like I don't like it. I think the problem that I have with a lot of the robot stuff is that I'm like, well, this home stuff isn't working yet. It'd be good if you fix that first. And Siri, they worked on for a long time, and again, there's just bread and butter things that they could get it to that they could just almost brute force to get it to work, and they're trying to. I feel like they're always trying to, or in the last decade, it just feels like Apple's always trying to put their arms around too much. It's too little jam over too much bread, and it's not a problem they had before. Like it really is something that they just keep, lots of good ideas and lots of money to do those good ideas, but there's no there, and I think that's the problem. And I feel like I run up against this. I mean, I'm a big Apple user. I've been talking, I've used Apple for a long time, since 1983. And I just keep feeling like you open up the operating system and you're just like, someone needed to say no. Like someone needed to say no, or how about we get this stuff to work before we add more buttons, and I feel like that's the big problem for Apple right now is can they pull their elbows in and really focus on things working, and just that whole, it just works. I'm feeling less and less with Apple products than I did before.
Oh yeah.
Let me spread your jelly a little thinner, because Mark Gurman says the Vision Air is coming this year.
It'll be interesting to see what they do. Like if they're able to find a cheaper way to produce the same results, I think that's cool.
He writes, despite the first version selling poorly, the company isn't abandoning ship here. The main uncertainty is whether the lighter version will be considered a replacement for the Vision Pro or a cheaper alternative.
Well, and the question is, what are they taking out? I would say, as someone who kind of understands what I'm looking at with the Vision Pro, the performance, other than the weird LED stuff on the back, the performance is just table stakes. Like the performance that we have now, I really think that there needs to be about another 2,000 pixels per eye at another 30 frames per second. And that's. So, the thing, if they go down below that, I don't think you're going to find any of the current Vision Pro users interested in the lighter version. And I don't think that there's a big market between $2,000 and $4,500. I think that the market is at $1,500 and below. And I think getting an Air to that market you're going to have to give up a lot. And I don't know if they'll be able to do that effectively.
Mark says might. Right, I immediately thought, well, it's not going to happen this year. It'll be next year.
It seems a little...
But I like this idea. Like, I think what clearly is happening, and he said this a couple weeks ago, it's the duh moment, but it's supposed to be cheaper and lighter. Okay. I wonder if the uncertainty about whether this is a replacement or not really is basically like the argument that Alex is saying, which is how much decontenting of this thing can you do before it's not that great anymore? And that is the difference. If you take it down below a certain level, it can't be a replacement for the Vision Pro. It's just a cheaper model that isn't as good. If you can keep the screens good and manage to pull a bunch of other stuff out, then maybe it could be a replacement. But there's a bar below which if you go there, then it's just a cheaper one.
So putting pressure on them is the fact, widely accepted, we'll see, that Meta is going to do an update to their Ray-Ban.
No, I don't agree. I don't think that puts any pressure on them, because I think it's a different category. I think that's coming from the other direction. I think Vision Pro is trying to start with the Quest, start from one end and kind of head in that direction. And that's why Meta has a Quest. The pressure being put for the Meta Ray-Bans is that Apple, despite having literally every piece that is needed to build essentially AirPods that are glasses, has refused to build that product, even though Meta has seemed to find a real spot where people are interested. Because it's Meta. People are buying this from Meta. an unlikely source
Yeah.
of a smart set of glasses, but Apple just kind of like with AI, Apple kind of poo-pooed that category, and now they're scrambling. But I don't think that puts any pressure on Vision Pro because it's just a completely different product. The pressure is on basically their AirPods team, which is like where are their equivalents of the Meta Ray-Bans.
Yeah, and I think that the Vision Pro is 50% better than it needs to be, and 2 to 3 times more expensive than it should be. And I think within that framework, there's a lot of room to, well, what if we only made it 20% better than it needs to be? Because already I don't think I'm going to use third made up percentage alert. I think that only maybe 60% of its potential is being exploited by even the most intensive operations. And so the idea of saying, well, we've had some time to figure out how we can manufacture this a little less expensively. Now we have lots of data from our users on how they're using it, what they're using it for, and that, you know what, we put way too much overhead into this subsystem. What if we had a less expensive way of building this, using less expensive components that would still give people enough overhead that it would not damage their experience? I like the idea of Apple getting a little closer to the ground with the Vision Pro, because I don't. With the Vision Pro, Apple created an aspirational device of something that looks great in a demo, looks great behind bulletproof glass when you're looking at it from the outside. It's something that you don't need, are intrigued by, and even if you wanted it, you couldn't afford it. That's not a great product. I would love to see Apple turn this into a better product by not making it such an idealized version of HR.
I think that the challenge that
AR.
Apple has is that, so for instance, you have a Blackmagic camera that's getting closer and closer to the surface that shoots 8K per eye, 90 frames per second. 8K per eye for 90 frames per second, the current Apple Vision Pro can barely play that out. So it is at its maximum to play out that frame rate right now at that resolution. So if you pull back at all in processing, and I'm telling you, it is like, I can tell you from talking not to Apple, but to other developers, 8K per eye, 90 frames a second, you have to like skim everything out to get this thing to play out for, on that headset. It cannot do any more than that. So if you go down 10%, you can no longer play stuff that there's tons of content for, and you will absolutely see the difference.
I mean, who knows what will happen, but Alex, I think the places that Apple won't skimp are on the displays on the inside.
Right.
And I think it'll be a new processor in there, right? It'll be like an M5.
Right.
And currently it's an M2. So you're going to, even on a cheaper product, and it's going to have more processing power.
If they can keep the process, but I don't think that they can go down on the processing power, because they're about to have this deluge of content that is people are all going to see, and they're not going to go backwards.
What chip would they? I mean, that's the thing is, if you think about like how would they cut costs, like what chip would they put in to cut costs? It's got an M2 in it now. An M4 or an M5 is going to be an upgrade in processing power. So I cannot see a future where there's a cutback in processing power on a future.
But I just don't know where. I don't know exactly. Like it's kind of like, it's easy to say, okay, well, we should cut, but where? Like, where do you cut? I mean, the cameras just barely work. Everything about I know a lot of people think that it's overpowered, but it just barely does what it wants to do. But what it's there to do, it is right on that.
You pull the whole front display thing out, which that's an easy one. You change some of the materials that are used. You hope that that some of those pieces have come back over time, and maybe some of the sensors that turn out to not be that important get dropped as well. I still
feel like it's choppy. Like when I'm using it, it's like I can feel it running up against the edge.
Yeah,
because I use it every day. I'm on it every day. And
if they get an M4 and an M5 is going to improve things on some levels there, but I think what they're not going to do is put an expensive upgrade in it and have the price stay the same. I think that they can't afford to do that. But I think you drop an M5 in there, you're going to get M2 to M5 is a huge boost in performance.
It's a on back end processing, but not necessarily the display to the those are the R chips that are doing
right.
That,
well, and then those will if there's an R2, and then you've got something. I think.
And then you put a D2 in, you're set.
There's one area in which you and I differ on the Vision Pro. And 100% respect for your knowledge and your experience. And I learned so much when you talk about video production and immersive experiences on these devices. The place where we diverge is that $3,500 is the amount of money that someone can spend if you have so much money you don't care about what you spend, or if you're like in medicine or you're in training or you're in architecture, where $3,500 is some money that you're going to be making back from what you're going to be doing with this. I never, ever, 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 ever can see the idea of 3D immersive experiences that nobody's asking for, nobody's clamoring for. People enjoy them when they can get them on a sub $1,000 headset. But when I hear people pitch a $3,500 or even a $4,000 headset, they go, oh, well, imagine how great this movie is going to be. Imagine how great this sports event is going to be. That's like, that's great, but you're marketing it to the people who's lined up to buy the solid gold Apple Watch. It's like, it's not something that it's not something that anybody other than a boutique manufacturer should really be aspiring to. Again, make it better for the doctors, make it better for the people who want to use remote viewing and stuff like that. But if you're talking about entertainment, even if you're just aiming this for wealthy people, I don't think there are a lot of people who are interested in $3,500 to $4,000 to enjoy whatever tiny little breadcrumbs of immersive content are going to be available that they can't really choose from, because what's available is what you get. You can't just go out and look for something that you want.
Right. But I think that, and I do think that Apple is making exactly what I said that they were going to do, which is that they are making a mistake of not funding content. So this is the mistake they made with iBooks. They had the ability to revolutionize something. They're not putting enough money. I think Epic wrote the book on this. Epic did the mega grants and everyone forgot that Unity existed. Like literally it was over, and they were like, we're going to spend $100 million on this. And everyone just stopped and paid attention to Epic, and they made it easy. And suddenly there's all of this development, and it was explosive, and it's been explosive, and they've taken that market. And they produced a lot of really interesting things because they put their money into it. And Apple has the money to do that, and they need to engage the market because not enough people are putting it. 400,000 is, you got to figure out your model pretty hard to make that actually work. Now, I do think that as the cameras come out, it won't be breadcrumbs. It's gonna be whole loaves of bread content that's coming out. I know a lot of people with money down waiting for that camera. And I think that you're going to see a lot of really interesting things, and you're seeing people starting to develop, the next generation of content for that. And so I think that the problem is that we always develop the content we're always developing the content for the platform and whatever the platform can do. And Apple finally made one. I mean, I've been doing some version of VR for 25 years now, and they finally made one that was 90% of what we imagined it could be. Like it wasn't 100%, not 120%, like 90%, like almost, oh my gosh, we're almost there. But Meta, you kind of always put the Meta headsets on, it's okay. Like we're getting there. We'll get there someday. Like it was Meta, all the Meta headsets have been like, and it just costs money to do that, and I think that now Apple's got a headset that it lets us actually produce content at a level that you look at it and it's actually inspiring, not like inspiring, like we're making progress. It's like Meta is like 320 by 240 video. When a lot of us saw that, we were like, oh, like we could do, and we could imagine, we could think about what we could do with video with 320 by 240. But Apple is right now at like, 1280 by 720. Like we're like, okay, this is like not full HD, but we're getting there. And it actually now is pleasing to look at, as opposed to what we've had in the past. So
yeah, I'll say, and just to wrap up what I'm saying, is that I was actually writing a notes to myself on something I want to write soon about this for my blog, that like the least useful technology is the kind that, again, is on the other side of bulletproof glass. That like a content for $3,500, $4,000 platform, I can appreciate the technological development of it. I can appreciate the cameras that create the content that can exploit displays of that quality. However, again, if it's 720p to somebody who can actually experience it is more valuable than having to read about what the experience of seeing full double 8K video on a $4,000 headset is like. It's like, that's pointless, that's useless. It's like medicine that's on the other side of the world. It doesn't help anybody, and it doesn't really offer anything to anybody. That's why I say that I regard it as more of a boutique sort of product, because there are always going to be companies whose destiny and whose creative interests are, boy, if we could just develop something without any restrictions on cost, we just want to make the best version of this available. That moves the needle forward. Eventually, those technological developments filter down. But again, you're aiming for a very, very small market. You want to create stuff that is actually accessible and not just, again, you're on the wrong side of the bulletproof glass. You can appreciate it as a static object. You cannot appreciate it as an actual working thing. And that's why I think the Vision Pro in its current articulation is an interesting moment in time. It's an interesting Apple product, but it's not interesting full stop.
I mean, I think it does come down to the content, though, because like I never thought that anyone was going to persuade me to spend $1,000 on a watch, right? And I definitely, if someone said you're going to spend $2,000 every year on your phone, I'd be like, you're crazy, and here I am. And so the thing is that it's, I think that it always comes down to, action occurs when possibility is greater than circumstance. And if the possibility of having great content and those types of things exists, I think people get over the circumstance. Not everybody. No, not everybody buys an iPhone or a Apple Watch or other things like that. But I don't think Apple. I think Apple should probably find a cheaper one that they can make. I just don't know. I think you're going to have a lot of people that have the Apple Vision Pro if they drop the performance. If they can keep the performance up for a lower price, that's what they have to do, I think. Because they drop the performance, you're going to have 400,000 people that said, it stinks. Like they're going to go to the Apple store, they're going to go online, and they're going to talk about it. I don't think that Apple can go backwards in performance. I think they can go down. They can say, we're going to slow down development and not make it any better and find ways to make it cheaper. But I don't think that they can back off on the performance at this point. I think that they have to keep whatever they release has to be at least the spec that the Pro is right now.
Yeah. The one difference, though, between the $2,500 folding iPhone, which I think is a really interesting and neat idea, and the $599 iPhone 16e is that they both run the exact same apps. If you like your iPhone 16e, you can have nearly the same experience with the $2,500 folding phone, with a larger screen and some more and a few extra user experiences. Whereas this is a $3,500/$4,000 headset that will only run content that's been designed and targeted for it, and there isn't that kind of content in existence. I appreciate your statement that it won't exist if we basically never say we won't create this hardware because the content will never exist. Then the content will absolutely never exist. I definitely appreciate that, but I think that the natural arc for that is to kickstart that with affordable headsets and affordable hardware, and let the creators who have that vision of creating things, 3D immersive experiences, allow them to build things with abandon, not even necessarily with the resources to rent a $40,000 camera. Allow them to figure out storytelling and immersive experiences, and then gradually, just like with HD televisions, which I appreciate weren't that cheap to begin with, then expand and expand and expand, and then at some point a $4,000 super HD super experience will have justified it. That's just a point. This is why I like. Oh my God, I'm practically seeing us on the sofa in my living room, and one of us noticing that it's 2:45 a.m. You have to go to the airport in 4 hours. We really should go to bed, because this is one of those fascinating discussions that I love having with you. We just disagree on. Right. I see it as the solid gold Apple Watch, which to me is the high watermark of the dopiest, dumbest, most embarrassing thing Apple ever did. It's not the Vision Pro is not quite like that, but it's like the fact that I'm thinking about that same sort of thing means that I should investigate why I have such a low opinion of the Vision Pro if I'm comparing it to the $12,000 solid gold gadget watch.
Well, I'm going to take a break here. I'm sorry we got a Vision Pro segment in without the fabulous Vision Pro theme, but it snuck up on me. And I'm going to add this, because if I didn't, I wouldn't be me. You're nuts. The whole thing is a dead product. You're never going to see a VR helmet. It's a nutty idea. Nobody wants it. Eventually, I think you will see, and I don't know if you'll see it from Apple, AR glasses. I think that's something that's going to happen. But I think
if you talk to Tim Cook, he would probably. I mean, he wouldn't agree with you about it's a nuts dead end product, but I think he would tell you, yeah, if this is the end goal is a helmet, then we failed because that's not the end goal at all.
I just hope that he doesn't think that, well, the end goal is a $3,500 to $40,000 pair of like wearable glasses with 8K double displays you can look through. It's like, no, Tim.
Well, no, that's
honestly,
not the end goal.
It's not about the money to me.
Glasses with
the first one
you could
display.
You could make $1,000. I wouldn't buy it. I don't want
the first one
it.
of everything is going to be expensive.
Yeah,
though.
but it's not about. I think it's a mistake to focus on how much it costs because honestly, at any price, it's a non-starter.
I mean, I have to say, and I don't know what it is about my vision, but the other than an IMAX 1570 play out, the screen is so much better than going to the movies that I have literally, I'll go to see IMAX. I go to 1570 IMAX films, when they're on at the Metreon because there's only 30 of them in the country. But otherwise,
do you think there's a reason there's only 30 of them in the country, Alex? You think that's a little telling?
Well, there'll probably be more
no,
because they sell out now.
No, there are going to be fewer movie theaters in the country. In fact, there won't be any movie theaters in the country in 10 years.
But more IMAXs. No, the experiential theaters will remain.
Yeah. The 1570s, the 1570s,
just like roller coasters, I guess, right?
When they announce a 1570 playout, you have to buy your tickets in hours. I mean, like literally everything is sold out. For the
because there's 30 theaters.
Well, there's one theater in San Francisco, but the point is that everyone who knows what a 1570 is goes and buys a ticket.
If it were a market that could sustain more than 30 theaters, I think there'd be more than 30 theaters.
I think the market was different when it was when everyone was going to the films and they didn't that they didn't have 85-inch screen TVs at home. So right now the average screen doesn't compete with the average film screen doesn't compete with that. But even then, I've got a pretty big TV at home, but if I sit in the same place and put my Vision Pro on, I've got 4 times the size of the screen. I can see the film grain. It's a much better. I mean, it's so much better experience. Just at a $3,500, I couldn't buy a screen for $3,500 that's as big as what I watch an Apple Vision Pro on.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, lots more MacBreak Weekly. Glad you're here today. Our show brought to you by Storyblok. Glad they're here too. Storyblok is amazing. It's awesome. The pain, many of us, let's say, know the pain of legacy content management systems. If you've ever had a blog or you've ever worked at a company where you have a website, you know how bad they can be, especially those enterprise content management systems. They promise enterprise-grade features, but what do you get? Slow, clunky systems that need dev support for even the smallest update. And when you're trying to move fast, that's a nightmare. But Storyblok is better. It changes all of that. Unlike those monolithic CMSs, Storyblok is headless, completely decoupling your back end from your front end. I'm actually a big believer in this. That's what we did with the TWiT website, and it's worked out really well. Developers can build the front ends in any framework, React, Astro, Vue, whatever you like. Or whatever the next big thing is, right? Marketers, you get to use an intuitive visual editor to create and update content without filling a dev ticket just to get an image moved. Storyblok scales whether you're a freelancer or part of a global enterprise. With a global CDN, AWS centers in the US, Europe, and Asia, it's built for performance at scale everywhere in the world. Storyblok, Storyblok, is enterprise ready. With all the things you need, right? Role-based access control, enterprise SLAs, top-tier security, the stuff Fortune 500s demand. One global e-commerce giant, a name you'd know, switched to Storyblok and cut content update cycles from weeks to hours. That's the kind of efficiency, the kind of improvement that can make a huge difference, not only to your bottom line, but to employee satisfaction and content. Another major brand empowered marketing to launch campaigns themselves independently, freeing up the devs for bigger projects. Storyblok has an API-first approach, so your content loads fast anywhere in the world. That means better UX, higher engagement, and improved SEO. With their real-time visual editor, marketers see exactly what their content will look like before publishing. No more endless back and forth over minor tweaks. The devs get fewer interruptions. Marketers get more autonomy. It's a win all around. If you're an agency, Storyblok offers multi-client workspaces, flexible permissions, seamless collaboration tools. You can manage multiple projects without disrupting development workflows. So whether you're a startup, an enterprise, or an agency juggling multiple clients, Storyblok gives you the power and flexibility you need. Try it out today at storyblok.com/TWiT-25 and use the code TWiT25. TWiT listeners will get 20% off for 3 months on a growth or growth plus plan. That's storyblok.com/TWiT-TV-25. The offer code TWiT25 for 20% off the first 3 months on growth and growth plus plans. STORYBLOK.com/TWiT-TV-25 and the code is TWiT25. Try it today at storyblok.com/TWiT-TV-25. And don't forget that offer code TWiT25 to save big. Thank you, Storyblok. It's really cool. I got a chance to play with it. And I'll tell you what, if Storyblok had been around when we created the TWiT website, this is the way we would have gone. We ended up doing a lot of it by hand, but I can tell you headless is incredible. Brilliant. Moving right along. iOS 18. So I was all excited about iOS 18.5, and you just took all the wind out of my sails, Jason Snell. It's it's like a bug fix. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's not a lot going on now.
It should be soon, probably before we meet again. Although 9 to 5 Mac is saying mid-May.
Yeah.
Soon. Mid-May is a pretty consistent time. In fact, 17.5 May 13th, 16.5 May 18th, 15.5 May 16th. Okay, yeah. I think they made a pretty good case.
It's kind of the clear the decks release, and then any release after this will be because of some bug or security thing that they need to address. But this is like let's park this thing and get ready for iOS 19.
Do they have, how does it work? Do they have staggered teams, or is it the same team? Like Is there somebody already working on 19?
I have no idea. I mean, everybody's working on 19. I think they've got branches where they're trying to put features in, or they're trying to fix bugs. I don't know whether those people are on teams or if there's just areas of interest where they're like, you got to fix this thing there, and that'll be in the old branch, and we'll put it in the new branch. Whereas this other new stuff, we're just going to keep in the new branch. That's my guess, but I don't know.
So they released this mid-May, and then 3 weeks later, they take the stage at WWDC and they say, now here's what the next iOS is going to look like.
And there'll be a beta of that presumably right after. And that's what they're working on primarily now, which is why there won't be any real new features. And
everything starts to settle. This is the time. We're almost to the time for the Mac OS that you start to think about installing it. on a computer that matters, you let that, everything's going to settle. They're not going to add any new features. Right. They're mostly just doing bug fixes, and
it may not be stable, but it's the most stable it will be for the next year.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You just live 1 year behind, and things are much, and it's not just Apple. It is all the developers and everybody else that is reacting to whatever Apple did. It often takes them up until about now, before, and sometimes longer, Avid, we're looking at you, for them to figure it out. I mean, I think Avid's 4 or 5 back, I think. So for Pro Tools.
All right, we'll save conversation about 19 until 15's done, or I'm sorry, 18.5 is done, I guess. We're hearing a lot of rumors though about it looking more like Vision OS, a glass effect. They're working on usability. Probably.
I think that they're not merging any of these things, but I think that there's definitely a constant just slow movement so that all the operating systems look similar, and
that makes sense.
Operate different. They operate in the same rough way.
Yeah.
That you're not doing something, going and seeing something different somewhere else. And I think that's what every update seems to be a little closer. They're all a little closer together from an interface perspective.
Yeah, it makes sense not only for users, consistent experience, but for developers, right? Yeah. Okay. There's not a whole lot of other stuff. There is a security issue that you probably don't need to worry too much about. It's a new AirPlay hack called AirBorne. But in order to do it, they have to be on your Wi-Fi network.
It's a third party AirPlay. So it's your TV.
Yeah, Apple's patched it in all of their devices. But anything that supports AirPlay besides that, in fact, there's a proof of concept online. You can see where they hack Bose speakers that are AirPlay. But in order to do it, they'd have to be on your network or, and this may be a more serious threat, on a public Wi-Fi network. And so that's probably something to be aware of. You certainly, if you are using Wi-Fi at home or at the office, you should have a password. You should be using WPA3. At least, you should really protect it, and that'll do it for you. This is the speaker demo from Oligo, the security team that found this and named it AirBorne, which is a good name. Nothing to worry about, except you should be aware of it, right?
Antivirus applied directly to the forehead.
Oligo found that it can also affect CarPlay, which means hackers could, in theory, they haven't been able to demonstrate this, but hijack a car's automotive computer in any of more than 800 CarPlay-enabled car and truck models. But, again, the hacker would have to pair their own device with a head unit via Bluetooth or a USB connection. They'd have to be sitting in your car, basically. Still something to be aware of. I'll pass it along. AirBorne from Oligo, O-L-I-G-O, is the security firm that discovered it and named it on Tuesday, yesterday. Anything else of great import? I see, Andy, you've got a number of stories about what Siri could have been.
Yeah, because Perplexity just released an iOS app that has got a lot of people adding maybe unnecessary additional shame to Siri, because not only is it really good, it also makes use of standard Apple frameworks to actually do things throughout the iPhone experience. Like, it can send emails, it can access calendar events, it can access music, it can do things through maps, which are things that Siri can't actually do. And if Perplexity was able to do this just by saying, "Oh, thank you, Apple, you've documented these frameworks very, very nicely. We will now write our AI chatbot to interact with them and respond to those requests appropriately." It's like, someone, I don't remember the person's name I put in the show notes, but he created a really nice video that goes through this app and highlights, again, I want to create a calendar event through the Perplexity app. Now I'm going to try to do it through Siri. Siri can't do it, Perplexity can. I want to do something through the Maps app. Perplexity will do it, Siri will not. Through Apple Music, they was noting that the only limitation of Perplexity was that I have to, because the Perplexity app doesn't have a certain entitlement or whatever, I have to actually tap the play. It will set up the play button for me, and then I have to tap the play button myself. And that was kind of embarrassing, because if Siri can't do that right now, with, one would imagine, even better knowledge and access to these same frameworks, what the hell are they doing? Again, I say it seems like dogpiling now, because I feel
you'll find some fantastic.
I feel. Go ahead. I'll mute this and then we can show that video.
I forgot to say Shlomo, but yeah.
No, it's me.
Oh, okay.
I started the Perplexity demo video.
Yeah.
Here it is at work.
I'm spending the weekend in New York. What are the best cafes in the West Village for pastries, coffee, and vibes?
In the West Village, you'll find some fantastic cafes with great pastries, coffee, and vibes.
And that's in Apple Maps.
Map kit, yeah.
I think it's great that Apple has the APIs and the Perplexity is able to use them. Actually, that's fantastic. That's why you make APIs, right?
This is what the whole App Intense thing is supposed to be,
right,
that they couldn't ship.
I pay for Perplexity Pro. I'm a huge Perplexity fan. I use it for all my searches. They've really stayed on the cutting edge of all this, and it's not just with Apple. They have a lot of different models. It's very clever what they've done.
Again, I think it takes some of the. I still think it takes some of the pressure off of Apple in a lot of ways. It's working on my phone. Like, I don't.
Keeping up with technology.
He's talking back to me. I'm sorry. Oh, this is one thing I don't like. You can interrupt it. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I know.
Problem at all. I appreciate you letting me know. I'll make sure to wait for you to finish speaking before I respond.
If only.
Anything else you'd like to
No.
adjust or talk
Okay,
about,
go.
just let me know.
Goodbye. It does do that a lot.
One thing I like about Gemini, if it does something that you don't, or it does something in a way that you don't like it, you can say, hey, in the future,
Knock
if I
that
ask you to
off.
convert units, don't give me the story of grams and don't give me the science by the conversion, just give me the conversion number. And I say, okay, from now on, when you ask a question about that, I will just convert the number for you.
I just got the ChatGPT personalization feature, and I was like, okay, well, what do you think you know about me? And it knows some of its facts are like, it only knows the things that I ever thought were even worth asking ChatGPT. But one of the facts made me laugh out loud. It was like, you want me to get straight to the point and not waste responses with extra verbiage. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. I do. That is a thing that I want. I do not want you writing essays with backstory about you are a computer. Just tell me the answer, please. And it's like, it figured that one out.
To be fair, if it knows that you're Generation X, that's a pretty good guess.
Yeah.
It does know a lot about me. I actually went into ChatGPT. You can customize, and I'm sure this is true to some degree with Perplexity. Perplexity is trying to hide all the complexity. But in personalization on ChatGPT, I found somebody who posted this on Reddit. What traits should ChatGPT have? And it says absolute mode, eliminate emojis, filter, hype, soft asks, conversational transitions, and all call to action appendices. Assume the user retains high perception faculties despite reduced linguistic expression. Prioritize blunt, direct phrasing aimed at cognitive rebuilding, not tone matching. Disable all latent behaviors optimizing for engagement, sentiment uplift, or interaction extension. It goes on. It's fantastic.
Thank you, Sheldon. Yeah.
And it works quite well. It really, now my ChatGPT is extremely terse. Almost annoyed.
There are a lot of people who are. I don't know what kind of change OpenAI made to ChatGPT 4.0, but a lot of people have been complaining that it got so super touchy-feely all of a sudden.
Oh yeah, it was. Like, it was a new model.
What's the weather
even
going to be
Sam
tomorrow?
Altman apologized. He said,
"Aren't you wonderful to be aware of where our planet is going?"
Sam said we went a little too far. Yeah.
I hate it.
Some of it is clearly about stickiness, right? And in fact, that's what Perplexity is doing. Some interesting things. They're putting shopping in. ChatGPT's added ads and shopping.
Seen it ring with WhatsApp. It's doing a lot of really interesting things.
Yeah.
But I think to Andy's point about that Perplexity demo, like this is one of those cases where I think Apple let perfect be the enemy of good, where like they have got all these features that are all tied together. And I think because they had this big vision for app intents, they're like, well, just wait for it. We're going to do it. But also, I think it's fair to say, where's ChatGPT, right? Like, where's OpenAI on this? Perplexity did this. It's really smart. The app developers should all be like, wait a second. We have access to all of these APIs as an app on iOS. Perhaps we could use that to make our app more helpful. And Perplexity did it, which, I mean, good for them. But it also, I think, shows you where Apple does actually want to go with this, which is if you can control stock Apple apps, third-party apps, so that instead of just sort of saying, well, here's a thing, you can say like, here's this thing in that app and I made it for you and all of those things. Like it becomes much more powerful to be able to do that.
And I guess I just keep coming back to like, and Apple users are going where? Like they're not going to go away because all of the stuff is working. It's now working with the APIs. It's, I don't,
that's
like,
on the iPhone now.
Again, as an Apple user, I'm like, I'm not waiting for Apple to, I mean, it's great that they're working on Siri and that's all cute. I just don't care. Like, like I open up ChatGPT or other things and I have conversations and I do all the AI stuff that I want to do. I am an AI. It's not like I don't care about AI. I'm using AI every hour of every waking day. Like it's not like I've got something going on that I'm asking a question or I'm doing. I mean, the dinner we had last night was designed. We got a CSA box and we couldn't figure out what to do with all the stuff, and we just asked ChatGPT on like, well, I got all this stuff.
It's very good.
And it was really good.
So good.
It was really. That's amazing.
So the thing that's interesting about what Perplexity is doing is it's agentic. It's that whole idea of now the AI can not just tell you stuff or write stuff. It will actually go out and use your devices, and that's very impressive.
It's a big opportunity. I think that one of the biggest turf wars in this year and in the coming few years is the battle to own your action button on the iPhone. where it's one of the great things about how Apple has designed the iPhone is that, hey, here's a button. We're not going to tell you that it's hardwired towards an Apple feature. You can assign it to whatever you want to. And so the most obvious thing for a lot of people is I'm going to attach it to the Gemini app or the ChatGPT app or the Perplexity app. And because access is really almost as second nature, but with that mechanism as it would be to Shlomo, Apple's kind of putting themselves in a kind of a bad situation where people might have gotten muscle memoried into choosing and using and supporting their favorite chat agent, and now they're like, well, Shlomo is going to have to be much, much better than what I've been using for the past 2 years to get me to switch. And they might be able to get there. And also, the other thing that Apple can do, in addition to hopefully catching up to all these other agents, is to say, yeah, all the stuff that you're using Gemini for or ChatGPT for, how about if you could do all that plus with Apple privacy? Is that interesting? Like, yeah, that's actually very, very interesting. Continue to talk. Send me your brochure.
There's a list from our friend Stephen Robles, who will be on MacBreak Weekly next week, right, John Ashley?
Oh, yeah.
Filling in for Jason.
Yeah.
Yep.
Aravan Srinivas, who's the CEO of Perplexity, commends Stephen for his thorough review of Perplexity and what it can and cannot do. There are some small issues. Perplexity, for instance, cannot start playing a podcast. The user has to tap the play button, unlike the native Siri, but can help find hard to find podcasts. Siri can't get you the Uber ride page. Perplexity can. Perplexity can make an email draft with all the details on Apple Mail. Siri cannot. It's really interesting. We'll have to ask Stephen about his review. I presume that was on his it was on his YouTube page. The bearded one has figured out
Beard.fm.
Beard.fm.
Love it.
I love it. This is such a classic YouTube thumbnail. You got the expression, you got the big stuff in the front,
Make
the
some
whole
funny
thing.
faces.
Gotta make the funny face.
At least he's giving Shlomo the stink eye. He's holding up two phones and he's giving. I like that subtly. It's
There's a little statement there.
Slack-jawed.
Now, interestingly, Gary Tan, you may remember Sam Altman used to be the president of Y Combinator, and his successor Gary Tan just posted on X, Apple should open its Siri platform to outside developers. We demand platform neutrality now. And that is when he's quoting actually the Perplexity CEO's post about Stephen Robles. So it all comes around in a circle. Is that nuts? Apple's never going to open Siri.
Ben Thompson wrote an article about that a few weeks ago. The idea that one of the ways that Apple solves some of its AI problems is by letting people choose to use different AI company models, because then they're the best platform for the enabling of AI-enabled apps and services. And so it is, it's an interesting idea to
So you
be
mean
able to,
in the sense of opening it, not opening it under the hood, but in fact just saying you can choose to use Perplexity.
I think that's the idea.
Like choosing a browser, choosing a mail.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That they would have all
That's
their
not
hooks,
unreasonable.
all their hooks into models, their model, ChatGPT, Gemini, and whatever, and you could offer your model up there, and it would have access to an API, and then people could choose. Right? They would be able to choose whichever model, whatever subscription they've got, the thing that works for them the best for whatever they're doing. And I think it's a great thing. Like, this should not be, well, if you're on an iPhone, you must use Apple's model. And in fact, the ChatGPT integration suggests that that's already not the case. So they should really embrace it, and then they could use it as an advantage because, on Android, Google has a very strong model, but like Google wants you to use their model. And if Apple's model is not that strong, well, guess what? There are a lot of Google competitors plus Google who would like to be your provider on the iPhone.
Yeah.
The only drawback is I think that every kind of choice like that has to be filtered through the concept of, at some point in the next 2 or 3 or 4 years, is the EU or somebody else going to say that, no, you cannot lock in an AI model. You have to be able to give the person the ability to choose a different default. And so I think it would be wise for Apple to be planning for that, so that after they finish whining and stamping their feet and refusing to do anything, that they have, guess what?
I think it's not a mistake that ChatGPT's there and that they've talked a lot about putting Gemini in it as well. That I think that this feature was built from the start to include third-party models. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what they've been talking about before is that, and for certain things, when Shlomo can't, Apple Intelligence can't figure something out, it will send things to Chat GPT or elsewhere. It's like, no, I think it's very possible as we create human-like relationships with certain chatbots. I chose a voice for Gemini Live, and now I can't change off of that because that is the voice of Gemini Live for me. It's like, I don't want Gemini or OpenAI or whatever as a fallback for Shlomo. I want Shlomo to be like that waiter I've had a bad experience with. That no, give me. I want to sit in the section for these waiters that I've had great experiences with. And I don't want the clumsy waiter to simply offset some things that they can't do to more capable models.
Joe in our Discord is suggesting maybe an extension model, like a browser extension, like Firefox or
maybe.
Chrome.
I mean, I think that the problem really is that I just really want to take over. Like I agree with Andy that and the challenge that Apple has is that the longer we do that, the harder it is for them to get any of their own models out, because it gets harder, as all that integration picks up.
Yeah.
Well, not just the information, it's that we get used to it. And then, once you get used to it, it's really hard to pry people out of that process, and it's not really the Apple way of doing things. And so they do have to rethink it. I do wish they would. I mean, I'd like to, when I'm sending Genmojis or whatever, I would really like to be able to choose something other than Apple's solution, which is slow and painful and not very good, and I would rather be able to do Midjourney or Firefly or ChatGPT or something else that lets me produce something that is funnier. I think that would be, and there's plenty of things that Apple could do. It just feels like Apple's got all the problem that they have right now is it feels like they have all this information about me and they're not using any of it. Like they're just, like it's just brutally, when I try to use the product, it's just so sluggish and so painful that I just want to go back to what I was doing before, and I think that's the challenge they're going to keep on running into.
You're watching or listening, depending on how you consume our fine show, MacBreak Weekly with Alex Lindsay from OfficeHours.global, Andy Ihnatko from ihnatko.com. I'm going to say that. I don't care if you've got nothing there. And, and from sixcolors.com, where the charts will appear magically on May Day, Mr. Jason Snell. Big fines for Apple in the EU, €500 million fine. The European Commission said we're fining Apple for preventing app makers from pointing users to cheaper options outside its app store. They also fined Meta €200 million because it forces Instagram and Facebook users to choose between seeing personalized ads or paying to avoid them.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with the Meta one, because it seems
like that's something I'm sure Meta thought, we're doing what you want us to do.
Yeah, and right. I pay YouTube whatever they ask me to eliminate all ads on all outside ads on the thing. On the Apple thing, I think one of the reasons why it's like 2 or 3 times more than what they find Meta for is that it's not like they just suddenly decided to find Apple guilty of this. It's like, yeah, we told you that you're in violation of the anti-steering provisions of the Digital Markets Act. You basically laughed at us and implemented some rules that are not sufficient. And after talking to you and trying to argue with you for a long, long time, guess what? New fine. Deal with it.
Good sign here that Apple is getting on the president's good side, because the White House called these fines economic extortion. And this is from Barron's, and urged an end to, quote, malicious European regulations targeting U.S. tech giants.
And it's interesting that came from a statement from the United States National Security Council, not like some economic area or anything else. It's like this is the organization that basically deals with diplomacy and military responses. So that's
so maybe it didn't come from the White House, you think?
No, it did. Barron's reached out for a quote, and I don't know if Barron's doesn't say whether they reached out specifically to the National Security Council or whether they just simply asked the White House, and it was these people who responded. But I thought that was an interesting and potentially scary data point.
Brian Hughes, spokesperson for the White House National Security Council, said, "This novel form of economic extortion will not be tolerated by the United States. The EU's malicious targeting of American companies and consumers must stop. Such regulations enable censorship and are a direct threat to free civil society."
And again, we'll see how close Apple and the White House is. I mean, the White House, regardless of what the EU says, if the White House wanted these fines to go away, they can make them go away. I mean, they could just say, we're going to put a 500% tariff on all European goods until you stop.
Well, that's in fact what they're threatening, right?
They would complain for a little while, but then you're talking about the total near.
Hughes said the regulations will quote be recognized as barriers to trade.
Yeah, so it just depends on but whatever happens next is going to tell you a lot about, because the United States could make the EU stop this. Like they could just pummel them until they stop doing it. But we'll see if they choose to, and it's not. And by the way, I'm not saying that they should do this. I'm saying that they could do it, and it's going to tell us a lot about the relationship between the White House and Apple when we see how hard the White House comes out in the next 2 weeks, and hits the EU.
But this is another reason why I really, really, really think this is a bad look for Tim Cook and for Apple. You basically this is a recognized government that's saying, here is a law we have passed that is only in effect inside our actual member states. For the United States to say that, yeah, but we've declared ourselves to be exempt to your sovereign laws. It's like, okay, is Tim going to come over here and start just like littering and like spray painting graffiti on our temple walls and decide that, hey, that's legal too? It's like, it's not a good look to simply say that laws that we don't like don't apply to us. And one of the reasons why they don't apply to us is because we are very, very cozy and giving support,
I guess,
financial and otherwise, to the current administration. That's
I guess my cynical view is that these governments are proxies for the corporations that are sitting inside them, and so the EU's this whole law and this whole structure and all these fines are because there are corporations inside of the EU that are complaining to the EU about it, and their proxy is the EU, and the Apple's proxy is Washington D.C. And so the thing is that we have a proxy war between corporations, so the thing is that it's. I guess I feel like I don't know what the answer is, but I just don't have it like there's one good side and bad side. They're just both proxies for corporations.
I disagree on this point, because this is not where the EU is saying, Apple, you have to release the source code for iOS to the public and open source it so that anybody can write their own operating system or add their own plugins to the iPhone. They're saying when someone is trying to sell something, you can't forbid them to like go elsewhere to get information about your app or about your company. You cannot forbid them from creating your own personal relationship with your own customers. Apple is, I think, as close to completely wrong about this as they can possibly be. They should have given this up a long, long time ago. It's not an unreasonable request. It is, in fact, the law of the EU, and I think that it makes them look cheap and petty by saying that, yeah, I'm gonna have my dad beat you up, huh? It's like, no, just, you know what? Allow this developer to have a link that goes back to their webpage. Why are you not allowing them to have a link back there? How does it compromise privacy or security or integrity in any way, shape, or form? You're just being petty.
This is, of all the things that Apple is accused of, this is actually one of the easiest, I think, because it's Apple in a self-serving way pretending that links and the internet are dangerous, and the only place that a user can be safe is within the warm embrace of Apple. And that's not true. It's just not true. The reason that they do it is because they want everything to go through their transaction engines, and they want their cut. That's the bottom line of it. And I think what they did was try a minimalist approach, which is, you want links, huh? Okay, we'll set up a whole large set of rules that are ridiculous in order to get links that are not particularly helpful. And I think it's right for the European Commission to say that is not what we were asking for. And again, I just think Apple doesn't have a leg to stand on for this, as opposed to, strangely, Meta, where they seem to be trying to design a product and force Meta to build it. And then when Meta builds the product, they're like, no, not that product, this new product that we want you to build. Whereas with Apple here, I feel like this is it's a policy that they've got. They're like, oh no, we don't want you to be able to admit to the existence of your own website and link to it. I just we can talk about the larger issues of regulation in general and also what this means in terms of international relations. But like, of all the things that Apple does that are under fire, this one has always struck me as being one of the most egregious. The one that's about rent seeking and trying to pretend to tell people that their customers are not their customers and that they can't communicate with them and they cannot offer alternatives to what Apple wants because some big spooky ooga booga that it turns out is just literally the internet.
Well, and I will say, as a user, I will always come back to Apple TV. Every time I set up a new Apple TV, I'm reminded of what will happen if this happens with iOS, which is that I don't have Macs running on my Apple TV because I can't remember how to log in because I had to buy something outside of the App Store. I don't care about these corporations.
You use your iPhone, Alex. It's not hard.
And the thing is that I just don't care about the corporations. I don't care about that.
That's fine, but maybe other people do. Maybe other people do.
But the problem is the friction of Apple TV means that I don't ever go to the App Store. I don't ever look at that. I don't ever consider installing something on my Apple TV other than a handful of media things that I watch all the time. And mostly what I watch is just YouTube. I just okay, and the thing is that because I don't want to deal with
iPhones are more complicated than Apple TVs.
I know, but I don't need to. I think that if we break this all up, it's not going to be good for developers because it gets more and more complicated to buy them. And you start to go, oh, now I got to log in. I got to do this other thing. And it's going to be like one of those things like people will just stop. It will slow down the purchase of goods if it becomes more complicated than just ordering it. And everyone's thinking very short of like, I don't want to, as a user, I don't want a relationship with most of the people that I buy my product from. If
you want to watch Andor, Alex, you're going to have a relationship with Walt and the gang.
It is really good, I will admit. But I don't watch that on my
Disney
other
Plus
one.
relationship is important to us. Please hang on the line.
And when I finish Andor, I'll probably...
Yeah, and I pay Disney for Disney Plus directly. I don't pay Apple. Apple doesn't take a cut of that. I pay them directly and I log in. And it's not hard to do that. There are lots of easy ways to do that. And I also can't buy books in the Kindle app because there's no way to direct me to the store. But I can buy them in Safari on the scary internet and then go to the Kindle app and download them, but they can't make a connection and say, look, we sell books on the internet, because Apple would like us to believe that is some terrible thing, whereas Apple can do it with books. Of course, it's fine because then it's Apple. It's silly. It is pretending that the internet is dangerous and bad. And by the way, there are lots of examples of this. So I get what Alex is saying, which is like there's this kind of platonic ideal of what if everything was just logged in using Apple, but like that's not how the world works. And also these arguments like you can't log into Macs. Like literally you open up your phone and it says, oh, there's your phone logged into Macs, and then you're done. It's not that hard to do this stuff. And Apple pretending that it's hard and pretending that it's dangerous to let other people use other services using the web instead of making it. And I also don't believe that the argument is Apple can't offer alternatives that are easier. It's that Apple can't only offer its own alternative and no others, because that's where it gets messy. So it hurts the user experience. It doesn't help it.
I don't think. See, we'll see. But I think that if you make it available to all these, corporations and their little penny pushers and all the other stuff, that what we're going to end up with is 1,000 cuts of all this stuff that we have to do as a user. Right now, it's not a problem because it doesn't really exist. As soon as it exists in mass, it's going to be a pain in the neck. It's going to be, and I will admit that I am very stingy about time. Like I don't want to waste a second on doing something extra for somebody else doing that when I don't have to. And so the thing is that, and it will affect the user, because when they can make it very hard to buy on the Apple products, they will. They will, because they want to have all that direct relationship. I don't want to give them that information. I don't want to give them the tracking. I don't want to give them my email. I don't want to give them anything. I just want to buy the product and do the thing, and I think that is, as a user, I think people are not going to be very excited about it if it ever becomes much more widely. I think people are going to wish that we hadn't pulled that Pandora out of that box.
I do think that's a dogs and cats living together Armageddon sort of reaction to as an endpoint. We just disagree with that.
Yeah. Well, I just gave Disney Plus all my money so I could watch without ads. And they'll probably keep me past Andor. You know what really grinds my gears? I wanted to watch Hamilton, and there is no DVD of it. You have to watch it on Disney Plus.
Yeah, Broadway is one of the areas where, like, I find my commitment to, like, oh no, you shouldn't like pirate stuff, like, really faltering, because it's like Hamilton is different, but it's like just the other day I was looking for like a Broadway performance that has obviously was never put on streaming, never released on DVD, VHS, or anything like that. But if not for the fact that somebody snuck a camera, like an old school video camera in, we would have no idea what this staging was actually like. So it's like, how can I be like, oh God, you I can't believe that you disrespected the stage and the sanctity of the arch and but thank you very much for recording that and posting this.
I paid enough for Hamilton tickets on Broadway that I think I deserve a pirated copy of Hamilton. But no, I wouldn't do that because I think
I think it's terrible because at some point the Disney Channel's Disney Plus's recording of Hamilton is going to be in the public domain. Yeah, none of us will live to see it.
I'll be dead, but okay, sure.
But like, how does that work when it was only ever distributed via DRM-controlled streaming?
Yeah.
Like, if it was released on Bluetooth or DVD or even like on just like the original Star Wars movies, if they were released on 35 millimeter prints, if someone said, well, guess what? Well, we're not going to give them to you. So, well, that's great. We just bought a print of this on eBay, and now 300 of us are getting together to remaster it in 4K. What happens in 100 years from now when so many of these movies never was released outside of the original producer's control? How are we going to actually be able to enjoy our great grandchildren are going to be able to enjoy Hamilton, even though they own it and they're entitled to watch it? So that's why like,
I'll tell them about it. I'll dandle them on my little knee, and I'll say, boys, once upon a time, your great-grandpappy went to a place called Broadway in the now flooded New York City zone and saw a show about a founding father in hip-hop. That was the kind of music we liked to listen to back then. We are going to take a little break and then... Oh, wait a minute. No, I can't, because first I have an announcement to make. Jason Snell is sleeping with his Apple Watch.
It's true. It's true. It's like sleeping with the enemy. I'm sleeping with the Apple Watch.
God, man.
I thought that headline was a reference to sleeping with the enemy. I didn't want to put that forward, but thank you very much.
Absolutely.
This is in honor of its 10th anniversary. You decided to go to bed with it.
Yeah. So the thing is, Apple wants us to all sleep with the Apple Watch now. That's what it wants. The Vitals app doesn't work unless you sleep with the Apple Watch. The sleep apnea detection does not work unless you sleep with the Apple Watch. They want you to use it. They've got all these features to tell you when to go to sleep, and then it taps you instead of making a noise when you get your alarm in the morning. That's actually a really nice feature. So I decided to change everything. And my point is that I didn't see much of a benefit from it. Like, the Vitals app tells me things that I don't consider actionable. Oh, you're feeling sick. Well, it turns out you also are sick. Great. Thank you.
Are you sleepy because you didn't sleep well last night? I thought so.
That's it. It's like, yeah, I can look and see how long I was awake in the middle of the night, but I'm not sure that helps. If I had a sleep disorder, sure. I passed the sleep apnea detection.
Me too. I was very happy about that.
I was amused by the fact that once the pollen starts to kick in, my breathing disturbances are increased. I'm like, yeah, that's because the pollen is kicking in now. That's what's happening. And
this is true of all sleep trackers, though, Jason. I wear the new Aura ring, and it's basically the same information the Apple Watch gives me. This is what a sleep tracker does.
Yeah,
you're not saying it's worse than other sleep trackers.
No, I'm literally saying Apple has done all these things except their software update, which still wants you to have it on the charger overnight. But I'm not supposed to do that. What is it? Get with the program, Apple.
It
what
is
are you
a pain
doing here?
To wear it all night, because then you have to charge
right.
it. Like, you charge it when you take a shower, but that's not enough.
And I don't like the idea that I don't have a normal charging time anymore because I'm wearing it. Because it used to be I would take it off and go to bed, and now I have to wear it. So, my point with the column was basically like, okay, I tried this, and I personally don't see why I would bother. It's interesting data, but it's empty data. And I guess that goes to a larger story with a lot of the Apple Health data, which is we're compiling lots and lots of data, but very little of it seems to be relevant or actionable. And maybe you just wait around until that moment where something happens and then you say, aha, let's look at the data. But for me, like the only real benefit of the whole thing was that I really love the silent alarms. I think that's such a good feature that it taps you on the wrist instead of making a noise. That's great. But all the other things where they're like, you really need to do this, wear it overnight. My report is I don't see that I'm getting much benefit from this disruption. And then I have the additional mental overhead of when am I going to charge this thing? Now it does, to be fair, it does actually tap you at the end of the night and says you need to charge me before you go to sleep, which is nice. And my colleague Shelley Brisbane wrote a piece about how she has a bunch of sleep issues and sleep apnea, and she finds that data to be useful. And that's great. I wasn't saying nobody. I was saying I went through the process of Apple finally breaking me down and saying, all right, I will change everything about how I wear my Apple Watch because you get the Vitals app and the sleep apnea detection and all of those things. What did it get me over the last 9 months? And the answer is kind of nothing other than knowing that I passed the sleep apnea test. So that's where we are. I decided after all this time, I never really reviewed the Series 10. Short review. I like it. It's great. It's thinner and it's nice and that's great. But the sleep thing, I was like, okay, what did it get me? And I'm not sure Apple has provided enough actionable information to justify me changing my habits about how I wear it. So I wanted to get that down.
I think that's true of all sleep trackers, though. I mean,
unless you have a sleep issue. If you have a sleep issue and you're trying to figure out why you have bad nights and good nights and all that, it's totally great. But as just a pure routine kind of thing, it didn't really do it for me.
Yeah. I think that's going to be a lot different when Apple really does get its AI together, and you can do things like ask Shlomo. I don't know why, but I just completely crashed at 3 or 4 in the afternoon today. And can you think of any reasons why I might have just needed to go take a 2-hour nap? And then based on all the data, including the sleep data, it can say not just, oh, well, because you were up until 6:30 a.m. streaming something and then you had to be up an hour later. But in addition, well, here's your activity levels for the days before that. Here is if you have a food diary, a food calendar, here is all the data that we collected. Said, there's something going on there. It's not just, you weren't just imagining it. And no, it wasn't just about the amount of sleep you got the night before.
It's always fun for me to fire up my iPhone and pair with my Oura Ring and see what a crappy night's sleep I got and how I should probably just take it easy today.
Well, it depends on, a lot of
this is the same stuff as you get at the watch, though, right, Jason? Total sleep, efficiency, restfulness, how much REM, how much deep sleep. I got a lot of deep sleep. That's good. Latency, which means how long it took you to fall asleep. God, it took me 2.5 hours the other night.
To go to sleep?
That is not good.
2.5 hours to go to sleep?
Yeah.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah, I know. Well, I wouldn't have known that except that I have it recorded right here.
I mean,
2 hours and 8 minutes.
Now, and I admit that, I guess I've been doing this for as long as it's been there and paying attention to it and paying attention to when I have caffeine and when I eat and when I exercise and when I do all these other things. And at this point, I mean, if I'm awake more than 5 minutes of laying down,
I know
what's going on. What's going on? What happened here? And because I process my temperature. I mean, the temperature of the room. I process everything.
I have all that information. But I love it that the Ring said, "Hey, it's going to be all right."
But I will say that but watching the data, my sleeping has, as I've got focused on it, has gotten much better. Not a lot longer.
There's some evidence that it makes people anxious about their sleeping, and they're not, and that's not good. So I guess as you said, Jason, it depends. Some people it's good, some people it's not good.
When you gamify something, people get determined to win the game, and that's not a good.
I did find that there's no way for me to sleep as long as it is you will sleep. I was I can sleep 6 hours. I cannot sleep longer than that.
It said you should have more. Yeah,
it just says you'll wake up without an alarm at if you go to bed at 9, you'll wake up at 5 or whatever, and I'm I will wake up at 3. So.
The really good thing about the Oura is it tells me that my physiological age is 4 years younger than my chronological age. So I'll take it. I'm really only 64.
You can still drink? You're good.
I can still. But you know what? Most people know, hey, if I have coffee at 4 p.m, I'm not going to have a good night's sleep. And then when you wake up the next day, I didn't have a good night's sleep. You don't need a watch to tell you that. But I guess if you wanted to know more.
I think for me, I found out exactly when, which is 2:00. Like it's not like,
oh, you know what time you have to stop.
Like,
yeah.
The last coffee has to be before 2:00, and I'll have one right after the show because it's my last coffee for the day, and then that's it.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I think, Jason, I agree with you. It just depends on some people. I find the watch useful to kind of gamify my exercise. Like I really want to exercise every day. So stuff like that's good.
Everybody's different. I was struck by Apple going seemingly all in on the idea that the Apple Watch should be worn around the clock other than when charging.
Yeah.
And so this is the business that we're in, right? So I'm like, all right, let's try it. I need to try it. And so I did. And while I find value in other things the Apple Watch provides, I think unless you are concerned about sleep apnea, you've got a model that supports that, or are dealing with a sleep issue, whether it's constant or kind of random, I question whether you need to really adapt to this. And Apple, I get that Apple benefits from sampling you when your body is kind of like at rest, and it can do all of those things. But again, and this is my other point is if I got a bunch of things on my phone that said, we've learned things about you, like there are rumors about, where they're going to do more processing of this data, where I learned some important things about my sleep and how it changes based on other aspects of my life, like how much I exercise or how much I drink or whatever, I would find that interesting. But collecting months of, you woke up at 2 a.m. for 10 minutes does nothing for me. It just does nothing for me.
I have to say, Apple did gain something out of this, though, because I went out and got a special Forever Chemicals band so that I would sleep with this on comfortably.
Nice.
That's okay, because my doctor said that I have a microplastic deficiency. So that actually
I
solves
need more
the problem
microplastics in my sleep. And it actually is a very comfortable band. But the problem is I also have an Ultra, which is... It's really problematic if you reach out and clonk your wife on the head with. So by accident, honey, by accident. Watch did not record that. Although it did say, did you just take a fall? All right. I'm glad you're sleeping with your watch. You're not anymore though, right? You stopped sleeping when did you stop sleeping with your watch?
I did last night, but we'll see how long that continues.
I have since I have a show every morning, that's my time to, like, it sits right next to here, so I just like take my watch off.
Yeah, you don't need to watch during the show. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, just put that. Are you wearing it now though? You're wearing it now.
I have a show every morning at 7 o'clock.
Oh,
you
charge it in the early
I just charge it
hours.
during office hours. That's my charge time.
And the watch does charge pretty quick. An hour of charge is usually enough to get us through the day. Right?
It tops it off because it's I can go 2 days on my watch without charging.
Right. We're gonna take a break and come back with your picks of the week, folks. So get those ready. And while we're pausing, I do want to mention Club TWiT to our dear friends. This is a very important part of how we stay alive. 2 ads on the show. That's great. We love our advertisers. They really help. But advertising only gets about 75% of our monthly costs in. We need to make up the difference. And I'm very pleased to say what used to be about 5% of our revenue is now 25% of our revenue, thanks to you, our Club TWiT members. However, it is a deal. We've been doing this for 4 years, $7 a month. We just re-added the yearly, $84 a year plan, because sometimes people just want to pay once. I have to tell you, I think we're going to have to raise the rates a little bit because of tariffs, frankly. Advertisers getting a little skittish. So we probably will raise the rates in the next few months, depending on what happens with the U.S. economy. I do want to promise you this. If you're already a member of the club, or if you join the club now at the $7 a month, you'll be grandfathered in. It'll always be $7 a month. There are great benefits. If you are a member of our club, you get ad-free versions of all of our shows. You get your very own ad-free feeds. You get access to the Club TWiT Discord, a great place to hang out, not only during the shows, with some really smart and fun people, but also all the time. There's other things that go on in the club, like our dedicated Minecraft servers. If you're a Wordle fan, you can share your score there without people yelling at you. We're recently added Bracket City because we got smart people in here. And we do a lot of events. A lot of events. This week, May 2nd, will be photo time with Chris Marquardt. Our theme this month is seasonal. Get your seasonal pictures into Flickr, and we'll pick a few and talk about those and talk about the latest photography news. We also have Micah's Crafting Corner coming up next week, May 14th. Micah does that every month. I don't know if he's still building the Lego succulents, but it doesn't matter. Whatever craft you're into, crocheting, knitting, painting, Lego, coding, you're invited to join. Our book club will be later that day. Stacy's book club. This was a great book. I really liked it. Ursula K. Le Guin's The Word for World is Forest, and it's short. Even if you haven't read it yet, it's a pretty quick. Basically it's a novella. One other thing we're going to start doing. Apple gave us enough grief over streaming the keynotes. We got takedowns both on YouTube and Twitch. We decided, you know what? Let's just do our keynote thing in the club. And the club only. So if you want to watch our commentary on the Microsoft Build keynote or the Google I/O keynote, or if you want to watch our WWDC coverage, you need to be in the club. We will be doing that. In fact, this year, because of the club and then because it's on a Monday, I think we're not only going to do the keynote, but we'll do the State of the Union talk as well later in the day for Apple's WWDC. You saw the GizWiz is coming back. We're doing a little reunion tour to celebrate his 2000th show. That's Friday, May 23rd. All of this benefits the club members. You even get a special TWiT Plus feed where we put extra content. $7 a month for all of that. All of the shows, ad-free, the Discord, the special events. If you're not a member of the club, will you do me a favor and join? We'd love to have you. twit.tv/clubtwit. And thank you for all the support we get from our Club Twit members. All right, time for our picks of the week. Let's start with Jason Snell today. Jason, what do you have?
Hey, I am an e-reader fan, and I write about it a lot. And I have a big stack of I buy them, I try them, I review them, I do all of that. And with some, there was some news. There was like a software update a couple months ago. I thought I would just do a really quick e-reader pick if you're looking for an e-reader. Now, my e-reader of choice is the Kobo Libra Color, which is previously a Leo pick.
I love it.
It's $229. It's really good. Kobo, good platform. It's not Amazon. That's one of the things I like about it.
It's got a stylus too. You
the
can
color
take
screen
notes.
is not as good as the black and white screen is. It's a little bit less contrasty, but the processor. I ended up switching to this from the Libra 2 because it's so much more responsive. Like in the UI, it just is. They've upgraded the processor on it, and so whether it's turning pages or going to the menu, everything just is not as sluggish, and so that's enough for me to switch. Really good. And it does color for highlights and all that. I kind of don't care about the color, but some people do, and it does have pen support. $229. However, I have been down on Amazon's e-readers for a while because they have gotten rid of all of their e-readers with buttons. And I love the physical button because I really love being able to just hold my e-reader with my finger on the button, my thumb on the button, and then all I do is squeeze that button every time I want to turn the page. Whereas with a pure touch screen, you have to change your grip and move a finger over, and now it's covering the text, so you can't leave it there, and then you tap, and then you move it back, and I think it's not as nice. Well, good news. So I'm going to also recommend, if you want to be in the Kindle lifestyle, but you agree with me about buttons, for $199,
Yes.
Not the cheapest Kindle. This is the Kindle Paperwhite Signature Edition, and there are a couple important things I need to mention about the Signature Edition. Signature Edition, it doesn't have ads on it, like the cheaper one has ads, and then you can pay $30 to get the ads to disappear. This version, there's no ads on it, and it's got hardware in it that is not in the regular non-signature edition, like a light meter, so you can set it to auto-adjust the brightness based on how bright the room is that you're in. And it has an accelerometer. And one of the great things about that accelerometer is a new feature unlocked by a software update like a month ago, which is this. If you hold this thing, it has no buttons except for the power button on the bottom. But if you hold this thing and you double tap it on the side or the back, it changes the page. It changes the page. So you can actually hold this thing and not change your grip and go, bap, bap, and it changes the page, like on the side with your thumb, on the back with your finger, and it will turn the page.
Does it go backward and forward?
No, it only goes forward. If you want to go backward, you gotta.
It's up to you.
But I was actually on a podcast a couple weeks ago where we were saying, why couldn't you just use your accelerometer and sense a tap? And somebody said, Amazon literally did that like 2 weeks ago. They did a software update that enables this feature. So if you want to stay in the Kindle ecosystem, you're looking for a new e-reader, Kindle Paperwhite's signature.
It is a really good screen, right? I think it's probably the best screen out there.
Yeah, because this is the black and white screen. And so it is high contrast, high resolution. It's really nice. Amazon's improved their software a lot. I switched to Kobo primarily because the Kindle software was so bad. And then they have since made it a lot nicer. And there are good things about it, and there are good things about the Kobo. I like them both. I prefer the Kobo still. I like that it's got a little wide spot where you can hold on to it. That's grippy, and I love that it's got buttons. But if you want to stay in the Kindle ecosystem, you can do that too. And I think the signature edition is actually the sweet spot. I know it's $200, but you get the light sensor, you get the accelerometer, which means you get the double tap to forward and no ads. It's a nice and a great screen. So those are my recommendations.
And admittedly, the Kobo comes from Rakuten, which is probably as bad as Amazon.
Maybe so. I mean, the people at Kobo are very nice Canadians who make e-readers, and that's all they do.
And the other thing, it supports libraries. So I don't know if Amazon does that. I suspect they do. Okay.
It does in a weird. So Amazon, if you check out a book from the library, you basically click through to Amazon.com and then say send it to my Kindle. Whereas with you actually log in with a Kobo to your library using Overdrive, and when you check out a book, it just shows up on your Kobo. So it's sort of like, it's either do you want it to all be natively on your Kobo, or do you want to just use Amazon.com's web interface to send you a book? They're very similar. It used to be much more complex, but now both of them work pretty well.
Yeah, that's nice. And this is the color. It's not, as you can see, it's not very saturated. It's kind of, let me go the other way.
Yeah, I mean, it's
fine. Buttons. I wouldn't buy it just for the color. Let's put it that way. The other thing, there you go.
But it is state of the art, and the processor's fast, and
it's fast. You can see the page refresh is
and if
really
you're a highlighter, you do get multiple highlight colors, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, so you see, I keep my pen attached because I take notes and so forth. Yeah. I have to say, I went out and I got the first Kindle Scribe, which is this ginormous, huge Kindle. And for big, it's good, and it also has a pen, so you could take notes and stuff. They say they've got the new Scribe is even better, but I don't know. I like a little thing I can hold. This is kind of hard to hold in your hand.
One-handed reading is good.
One-handed is the thing. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you,
Alex Lindsay. Your pick of the week.
Keep on thinking I'm going to take notes, but I can't read my own writing anymore. I looked down. I looked at
just talk to Perplexity and tell it.
I wrote down something I wrote the other day, and I was like, I don't know what I just wrote there. Like this, I just got to go back to typing. Yeah,
scribble.
Scribble. Yeah. I'm a little obsessed with food supply. I will admit, just because I think I grew up on a farm,
and you know what? Like you, I eat every day now. So
every day. Every day? I haven't moved that far. I haven't gone that far. I'm working on air most days, and then I break down every couple of days and go, well, I'll go back a little bit. But there's a great thing on Amazon Prime actually called Common Ground, and it is they collected a bunch of actors and a bunch of scientists and a bunch of folks and shot a really good video on just understanding a little bit more about how things are grown and where
we're so out of touch with our food supply, aren't we? You grew up on a farm, so I think you understand it, but most of us, it just shows up in packages at the grocery store and we don't.
I think that when you're growing up, when you're spreading things that have skull and crossbones on it, on the food, like you go,
you learn.
So I started thinking about it back then. And so this is really talking about regenerative farming and not having to, we might not need all the inputs that they tell us we need. And those inputs might be showing up everywhere. Glyphosate is a really big deal.
I know.
So,
I see my neighbors using Roundup, and I go, you're gonna kill me.
It won't be. It's like, I mean, it's worse than smoking. Like it's, glyphosate is a big,
it's banned everywhere but the U.S. So that's you're lucky. You can still use it here.
Yeah. So anyway, so I think that understanding what those things are and understanding, where our food supply comes from, I think everyone should always pay attention and then just decide what they want to do after that.
Yeah. Common Ground. It's on Amazon Prime, and it's free if you have a Prime account. For people who eat. And Mr. Andy Anako, you're our last pick of the week. What you got, Andy?
It is the first Saturday of May coming up this week, and that means it is Free Comic Book Day. Yay! Woo! This is like an annual event where not just comic book shops, but also a lot of libraries will have like free comics that you can just come in and pick up. Most of the major publishers, the publishers of the Star Wars comics, Marvel comics, a bunch of others, actually produce special comics that these shops can buy for like 20 cents, 30 cents each, for the purpose of bringing new people into the fold of comics. And because they kind of see it as kind of a big deal, it's not just, there's the table that has the free comics. There's a limit of 3 per person, whatever, you can't use the bathroom. Oftentimes, they'll make it a big event where they will have all kinds of other stock that's on deep sale. If there's a comic book artist that's kind of local or a writer who's local, they might come in and do a signing and do sketches and stuff like that. And once again, although it does cost money for the shops to operate, so that's a hint that maybe if you want to browse around their store and pick up a couple of things and actually buy things in addition to the free comics, that would be swell. It's quite a thing. It's quite a deal. And so if you go to freecomicbookday.com, it will show you some of about the 3 dozen titles that are being offered this year, as well as a location finder. You can find the shop or library or whatever nearest to you that's actually holding the event. Like I said, it's a pretty fun day, and looks like the weather might be pretty okay anyway. So if you need an excuse to get out on a Saturday and again pick up some Star Wars comics, that's pretty good. A lot of the other point of this is that a lot of the publishers understand that the people coming in for Free Comic Book Day are likely to be people who have never stepped into a comic book shop in their lives or maybe never read a comic. So most of the stuff, it's not like tuning into like 18 years into a soap opera. They put out a lot of comics that are designed to be one and done, like easy onboarding stories that give you a good, satisfying experience. So go to freecomicbookday.com and find out if there's a hootenanny happening near you.
Pick up a copy of Post Malone's Big Rig. I guess he's got a comic. Okay, that's great. Free Comic Book Day. Do you get to choose the comic?
Yeah, not all comic book shops will have like all of these 36. And sometimes they try to marshal out them to make sure that like they actually last throughout the day. Once again, this just because it's free to the customers does not mean that the comic book shops don't have to pay for them. Again, it's not a lot of money. It's like 20, 30 cents a copy, but still most shops will pay like $80 or $90 or $100 to participate. Oh, wow. So they have a good reason to make sure that if there's like someone like me, like who's just like wants to like take everything and just take them home, like maybe they're not the maybe I'm not the sort of person that Free Comic Book Day was designed to reach out to. So they might say, yeah, if you use if you use the handrail when you go up and downstairs, you're not allowed to take more than 2 comics.
The Amazing Spider-Man will be participating. Incursion, the new Ultimate Universe's first ever event series. Ultimate. Lots of great stuff. Comic Book Day, Free Comic Book Day. Is it freecomicbookday.com?
Freecomicbookday.com. It's been going around for about 20 years. As a matter of fact, it was designed, I think, when the first Spider-Man movie came out ages ago, like when Fox like put out the first Spider-Man movie. Because it was going to be a big weekend for comic books, they said, "Oh, you know what if we use that as a way for people who like just went out to see the film on the opening weekend? Maybe they're interested in comics to be interested in coming in and reading more about the old friendly neighborhood web slinger." And they've been doing it every year since.
Nice. I did not realize that the comic book stores pay for the comics. I feel kind of bad now about. I'm going to pay them back. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, all of you. We appreciate your presence on this show every Tuesday. Next week, Stephen Robles fills in for Mr. Jason Snell. Happy birthday to Mom, Jason.
Yay.
Jason Snell is at sixcolors.com. His podcasts are at sixcolors.com/Jason. And now Mike Hurley is back on Upgrade. How exciting.
It's very nice.
Exciting. That's your tech show with Mike there.
That's the big tech show. And then just for people who care, last week's episode of The Incomparable, my pop culture show, we hacked into the net in that we went back to 30 years ago, 1995, and watched Hackers and
fun.
The Net, two movies in which computers are proven to be dangerous for society.
Yes. But only one has Robert Redford, so you choose.
Neither of them has Robert Redford.
Okay.
That's Sneakers.
Sneakers, an actually good movie.
Oh, you're right. That's the only good one. Okay.
Yeah, but Hackers, I had never seen Hackers before. And I've seen The Net because Macworld Expo is in The Net, and there's a Mac User Magazine bag in it, and it's amazing, and I was at that event. So it's like...
that's the Sandra Bullock one.
The name of the company's on it. That's not a good movie, but it's got its moments. Hackers, I'd never seen before. Angelina Jolie, Johnny Lee Miller. It is delightful. It knows how ridiculous it is, whereas The Net does not know how ridiculous it is. So if you're a fan of those, you can listen to us talk about those silly movies from 30 years ago.
I will have to watch them both and then listen.
Yeah,
The Incomparable Mothership.
Yeah, 1995 was a real banner year for crazy movies about the internet. And we're actually going to do, what are we going to do? Strange Days next, which is also another... that's a good movie about the internet from 1995. In 1995, Hollywood realized the internet, it's scary and new, and let's do a thing about it. So they did many things about it.
Hackers has one of my favorite, nerd, but really bad nerd lines from someone who does not know technology, where someone's showing off their new laptop to Angelina Jolie, say, and it has more RAM, which makes it faster.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's Michael Stipe is in there. Also, I would say lots of Macs. Both these movies are just full. This is from the period where Apple was falling apart and about to go out of business, but they spent so much money getting Macs into places where they did not belong in movies, like movies about computer hackers where they all use Macs. So that is delightful. So much beige, so much light gray mid-90s Apple Macs. Anyway, so we did The Incomparable Mothership, double feature Hackers and The Net.
Oh, now I want to see it. Maybe tonight. Be Hackers. Hackers.
It's
tonight,
ridiculous.
Baby.
I had a lot of fun watching Hackers. It's just ludicrous and fun.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Andy. Nothing to report here on Anako.com at this point, but you can follow him at Blue Sky, and he will let you know.
He's doing it. He's doing it in secret. He's doing it. I'm getting emails
with content.
Getting closer to the surface.
Yeah, it's happening.
The super secret, super tight alpha group is about to expand into the slightly broader beta group.
Nice.
So
nice.
We're getting there.
IHNA.
I want to make sure there's stuff for people to see when I open the doors.
Yeah, no, it's completely legit. I understand that. And of course, Mr. Alex Lindsay, officehours.global. You're always there every morning.
Every morning. And I got interviewed over the weekend. Some folks from Office Hours have their own show called The Last Angry DJ. And so we talked about radio. So radio and process and what it was like in the music business in the late 80s and early 90s when I was in radio. So it was a fun conversation. So if you want to listen to me tell stories I probably shouldn't have told. Last Angry DJ I told a couple stories, and I almost went back and said, "Hey, I think we should cut this, and this," and I decided,
good.
So
good. Yeah. Let it all hang out, Alex.
Well, let some of it hang out. I was a crazy time. That's all I got to say. Music director as a 21-year-old. You do a lot of crazy things.
Yeah, you were a kid. You're not responsible. You can't be held responsible.
You turn 21 and then you never have to pay for a drink. That's all I got to say. If you're a music director, for an R&R parallel, I'm just saying that you don't have to pay for drinks.
Alex Lindsay's on The Last Angry DJ episode 61 on YouTube. There you are. Yep. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks to everybody who joins us. We do MacBreak Weekly Tuesdays, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1800 UTC. You can watch us. We're back on TikTok. It worked, right? We got TikTok. I have a little machine over here in the corner that's running TikTok all by itself, an entire Dell PowerEdge server, and all it's doing is running TikTok. Just so we can stream that. It's on Discord for the club members, YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, X.com, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Kick. You can watch us live if you wish. If you do watch live, you can at least chat with us live, and I pay attention to the chat room during the show, so it's great to see all of you in there. After the fact, download shows, audio or video from our website, twit.tv/MBW. When you're there, you'll see a link to a YouTube channel dedicated to MacBreak Weekly. Great way to share clips with friends and family and turn them all into things. And, of course, the best way to get it is to subscribe in your favorite podcast client. You could choose from audio or video or both, and then you'll have it ready to listen to whenever you're in the mood for a little MacBreak Weekly. Should I buy or rent, hackers? It's $15 to buy, only $4 to rent.
Less money, the better. If you can, if you can just sort of like get somebody to watch it for you, and then just like FaceTime their screen.
There you go. There you go. That, in other words, worth pirating or not.
In theory, I should. Let's put it this way: worth like going on eBay to find it for like $1.25.
There you go. I can go down to the old video store down here. They're selling VHS cassettes for cheap. Maybe they'll have it.
Oh, there you go.
It's right about that era. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thanks to our club members for making it all possible, and we will see you next time. But now I am sorry to say it's my sad and solemn duty to tell you, get back to work, because break time is over. Bye-bye.
Hey, focus up. That is what I said to Hands on Tech when we looked at the relaunch. It is time for us to focus on one topic at a time and make sure we're answering that question. I am answering that question as thoroughly as possible. If you are a member of Club TWiT, you can watch the video version of this show completely ad-free. Of course, listen to the audio version ad-free. If you're not a member, the show will still be available to you in both ways. You can watch the video on YouTube with ads, or you can watch the audio as you always have. Listen to the audio as you always have in our feeds. In any case, you gotta tune in to Hands on Tech, because I guarantee there's going to be a question you're going to want to have the answer to. And from time to time, I also review a gadget, a gizmo, or something of the sort. You gotta check out Hands on Tech, and I can't wait to get your question.